Behind the lipstick, red lipstick, subtle femme fatale. And I was reminded of all the amazing pulpy stories that I've grown up reading. I was reminded of Sidney Sheldon. I was reminded of so many amazing film noir of the 1930s and 40s Hollywood. I was reminded of Chabrol, Godard, Truffaut, and the amazing French New Wave films. Because there's something about, pulp which has always, got my interest, and it was a page turner. I read it, on my way from Jaipur to Delhi. I'm just coming from Jaipur Literature Festival, and I picked this book up, when I started the journey, and somewhere in the middle I finished it, and it was really, in one go. So could you tell a little, about your approach to writing? Of course, this is a similarity between you and Puneet, that, while I was reading your book, it was very visually very strong. I could see that this is tailor-made to be adapted. I could see a movie or a series easily adapted. I don't think that it would take much of an effort for any screenwriter. Because already what you have written, there is so much of substance, there's so much material there, all the ingredients that are needed for a film, to work. And a commercial film at the same time, film which has a very strong female character, a woman with agency, and you have really asked the right question. And the one thing that really stood out for me is how well you have tackled the psychology, and so just want to have some insights about your process, and would you like to adapt it, and any specific way you would like to adapt it?
Yeah, when I started writing, this novel, so before that I trained myself in screenwriting, and I had always been in love with the subject of psychology. Because everybody, so many people, everybody has a different psychology. Be it a criminal, be it a politician, be it just anybody, or be it just a layman. Everybody has a totally different psychology. So you can create so many stories if you study psychology. That's what I did in this book. I picked up the psychology of a woman who does not understand even herself. Forget about her family or her friends, so they can never understand her. Even she can't understand what she's doing next. So I tried to do that in the book. And since I always also trained in screenwriting, so that helped me a lot to write the book in a way that is not difficult. It can be seamlessly adopted into a web series or a movie, as the case may be.
And while you were writing this book, what was the most challenging aspect of it? I've seen this, and this is a pertinent question that, as a male, you are trying to bring a woman character into life, and, there are certain challenges, because I know, I've spoken to a lot of female screenwriters who are my friend, and they say that, a man hasn't experienced the pain, the suffering. We are living in a society which is so patriarchal. So a man has not seen it. He has not seen it firsthand. So what was it that made you, root for this character so strongly?
I just started writing, and I didn't have any, precedent or anything based on nobody. It just came into my mind. And I kept it step by step. Yes, of course, I revised it 4 times before going into the print. I revised the novel 4 times, and in all the 4 times I deleted some, I added some, and finally this is the outcome of the thing. So I always kept in mind that I was very sure that I had to create a character which very few people can, reflect with, because it is a very unique character, and I think to the best of my knowledge, I have not seen any such character on screen so far. Have you?
Of course, there's a very refreshing aspect about the character, but of course, as I told you, there's also a very strong pulpy quality.
Correct.
In fact, speaking of pulpy quality, here I am also reminded of Quentin Tarantino. Gotham touched upon, Stanley Kubrick, who of course is one of my all-time favorite filmmakers. I'm sure Quentin Tarantino is another filmmaker who, even if he may not be your favorite filmmaker, he is a filmmaker who always, draws your interest towards something that he's doing. In 1994 at the Cannes Film Festival, when he premiered, in the main competition, his film Pulp Fiction, it really revolutionized, the idea of how the world perceives movies. But before that, much before that, Stanley Kubrick, probably in the 60s made a film called The Killing. And The Killing, is probably the first film which really, in a commercial and a mainstream space, explores the idea of a non-linear narrative. And it does so in such a breathtaking way that, Christopher Nolan cites often, as one of his biggest influences in his life. Similarly, what Pulp Fiction does is, when we are reading a novel, there is no question of linearity that is associated with it. We know we can start probably in the middle, then we can probably go back and forth. Sometimes, we are in one timeline, then we are in a different timeline. And the flow is always very, very natural. But for some reason, films for the longest time, and when I say films, mostly Hollywood films and films made in the West, they were totally working as per the 3x structure. Now the 3x structure is this Bible, this mantra which says that a film has 3x, the beginning, the middle and the end. Even though Jean-Luc Godard, the great French filmmaker, says that yes, a film may have 3x, but they may not be in the same order. But at the same time, a lot of Hollywood films were sticking to the idea of having this beginning, this middle, this end. But it all changed after Pulp Fiction. Of course, people like Stanley Kubrick, and there were so many examples when this idea was totally not taken seriously. But Pulp Fiction really re-established it in a way like no films in Hollywood sort of space has done. So Gautam, I just want to understand, when you are writing a book, or when you are writing a screenplay, how much are you paying attention to these acts, the structuring, that okay, we'll have an introduction, sort of a setup, then we'll get into the confrontation, then we'll get into the resolution and denouement. How much are you worried about that? And how much seriously do you take Hollywood's, obsession with the 3x structure and the fact that, on a certain page, a certain sort of a, entity should happen, maybe the point of no return should happen at this page number, the inciting incident should happen at page number 30, the point of no return should happen at page number that. How seriously you take that obsession that Hollywood has known for the longest time?
Look at any set of rules that you have, you come to it because they have been tried, tested, experimented, and it has come into that. Now, it's one thing to say that late 50s when Kubrick started, or slightly before that when Hitchcock started, this whole act system was coming into play. There is a little bit of a science behind that, but then you go back 50 years, you look at people like Hemingway, Munshi Premchand, Gurudev Tagore. जब सिनेमा नया नया था तो these were the people who were the go-to people. In fact, लोकमान्य तिलक, Tagore, Munshi Premchand, these stalwarts were really impressed with cinema because they felt that for the first time, people who could not read can get an idea of what a great book is. So if you see that initial films, initial cinema, largely included mythological tales, classic stories, even in the West. I think somewhere the whole concept of making the art of writing into a science which can be applied is true to some extent, but it also works on different principles. The idea is to get people's attention. The sooner you get, the greater the chance of holding their attention is. So, a 90-minute की film is 90 minutes in that 3-act structure. You take about 2-3 minutes for people to come in. People might be late to get into a cinema hall. People might be talking. People might be looking at things. People might want to eat something. Once they settle down, you have about 5-6 minutes past. So that is why you say that in the first 10 or 15 minutes, you should have something interesting to happen.
It's called the inciting incident.
People like Roger Corman, who was a very big producer, and a lot of greats in cinema passed through his office, right? From people like Coppola, Brian De Palma, just about anybody, everybody, उनके लिए उन्होंने film बनाई. His funda was very simple. His fundamental principle was that I will give you X amount of money. You finish the film in this much. Every 5-10 pages there should either be some skin, so put some sexual scene there, or there should be some gore or blood. So every 10 pages do something. So that's also trying to tell people that keep them interested, keep them going. Any good book that you read has this basically imprinted in that. You were talking about Tarantino. Tarantino, a lot of people would think that people like Quentin Tarantino, Ram Gopal Varma, you know, when you compare them to, and this is just a personal opinion, I mean, I'm not passing judgment on anybody, but if you compare them to a different set of filmmakers, you will automatically say that वो दूसरे वाले intellectual हैं. Like, for example, great as Vishal Bhardwaj might be, he is not the greatest filmmaker, okay? He is not also the greatest person to adapt Shakespeare. But because the guy adapts Shakespeare, because the guy largely works with Gulzar Sahab, people believe him to be a slightly more intellectual, artistic person.
Very interesting remark, and I partly agree with it, I must say.
I mean, I don't want to step into an emotional minefield here, but then think about it. You know, people say that Ram Gopal Varma is not as intellectual as compared to Rajkumar Hirani. Okay, look at Rajkumar Hirani's films. You laugh, you cry, you really enjoy. 6 months later, you forget it. Look at the impact somebody like Ramu has had. Look at the impact somebody like Tarantino has. Tarantino is a voracious reader. He is very fond of another pulp writer, Elmer Leonard. And Tarantino read a book. He liked it so much. The book was called Rum Punch. He picked it up from a second-hand bookstore, so he did not have the first page. So he didn't know how the character was described. She was a black woman. He missed that part. And the woman's name, it was a black woman, he missed that, white woman, sorry, he missed that part. The woman's name was Jackie Brown. So he ended up imagining a black actress, and he had a huge crush on Pam Grier at that time. He imagined that, and he made the entire film